So it's early in the morning. It's gonna be real hot today, and we're going to pull the heads off of the 4.3 that's in the Thompson cubby. So like I say, it's real early. Sun just starting to come out. I'm gonna try and beat the sun because it's gonna be a cooker. So just follow along, and we'll try and get that done. So we are inside of the mating voyage. I went ahead and pulled one of the valve covers off. As I showed in the last video, this thing was full of water. Sorry about the fan. It is 90 something degrees. It looks real clean inside the valve cover area. I mean, there is some milky oil in there. We went ahead and took the intake off. I'm going to pull these heads and get them checked, but I did notice that this manifold here is cracked. And someone tried to weld it, shitty weld. And so either we're going to be getting it repaired while it's off, or we're going to be getting another one. But I did hook a battery up, and the trim does work. You can hear it, well, got a loose connection. Got a loose connection. Alright. That's actually the trim going down. Going up, and engine won't turn over. It tried to. There it goes. I thought it was locked up. With all the water in it, you think it'd be locked, but we got such a bad connection back here. Will it turn over? I never tried it. It tried, but it's just full of water. There's still water dripping out of the dipstick tube. These cables are so dry rotted and corroded. Got to tighten the battery cables up. It tried to turn a little bit. I would assume that it was locked. But we're not getting a good connection. Let's try it again. I don't trust this motor anyway. Yeah, we're not getting a good connection. Reason being, because this thing is so full of water, I bet you it's cracked. They had the intake bolts, almost all of them were off, except for two. So someone was going in there and they were going to do something. But looking at the top of the rockers, I mean, they look real clean. I wish we can get it to turn over, but I have to get a wrench and tighten that up. We ain't got nothing. So I'm just gonna move on. We're gonna pull the heads off of it anyway. I'm not even gonna fool with it. I'm not even going to try and get this engine going, because it's pretty much going to be toast by looking at the rust. So I'm going to start with this head. I'm going to get the manifold off. We'll pop the head off, and then we can see if those cylinders got any rust in it. So we got both of the heads off. This cylinder right here has got some rust in it. Look like that cylinder don't, unless it's at the bottom. This piston's up. This one's got water in it coming up past the rings, and so do that one. This bottom end is still full of milky water. You can see it through the distributor hole. But I just wanted the heads off of it to get them checked at the head shop. Make sure they're not cracked so we can use them on our new engine. So this is the engine that we're going to use. I got to take the heads off of it, but I took the intake off. Now this is the Vortec engine that has the spider injection. And man, this thing is full of rust. And it wouldn't turn all the way over. And it has a lot of crank in play. So it's almost like the main bearings are bad. And when I do turn it over, it makes a weird noise. So I don't think I'm going to use this engine. I've already relocated another engine. But before that, I want to take these heads off and set the MerCruiser heads on top of this block, because as you can see, the way these heads are set up, the surface has a real sharp angle, and that intake is really wide. And when we put the MerCruiser intake on there, the screw holes don't line up. So I'm going to have to use the MerCruiser heads, which I'm going to take those heads to the head shop and have them checked. Hopefully they're not cracked. And then the manifold, like I was showing you, probably gonna let water out everywhere. I'm sorry. Milky water. Ugh. It's cracked. So what I'm going to do is take those heads. We're going to sit them on top of this later model 4.3 block, and make sure that the deck height of the block is the same. If it is, then we'll be able to put those heads on another motor that we got coming and the intake, and we'll be able to use a later model block. So I'm gonna go ahead and rip these heads off, and we'll get those heads set up, start a couple bolts, and we should be good. I looked it up on a MerCruiser forum on the internet. A lot of guys was arguing back and forth that a non-MerCruiser motor won't work. Some say it will, you gotta change the heads. Some say you gotta change the cam shaft. But they said if it was a truck motor, you won't have to worry about changing the cam shaft. I don't know. So we're just gonna shoot for it and we'll find out on our own. So we ran into a snag with the later model 4.3 engine. I set the MerCruiser intake up on top of this later model engine, and none of the bolt holes line up. Reason being, the heads on the MerCruiser engine, I think they're taller, and the surface where the intake is more straight, where this engine has a wider, the heads have a wider plenum setup. This is the Vortec intake. And it's got bigger ports and it's a lot wider. So I'm gonna have to use the MerCruiser heads. That was the reason why I took the heads off, and hopefully they're good. But this engine here is full of rust. It has a lot of in play on the crankshaft, and when you turn it over, it makes a weird noise. It was locked up. I had to spray some PB blaster down in one of the cylinders. So I think this engine is just no good. It's gonna have to be built. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna take the MerCruiser heads. We're gonna use this engine as a test engine, and I'm going to bolt the MerCruiser heads on here, just kind of bolt them on here, and we'll make sure that the intake and everything is going to line up, because I'm getting another engine. It's supposed to be a good engine. I really believe it is, and I just want to make sure everything's going to work right, because I looked it up on some MerCruiser forums on the internet. A lot of guys say you can use a truck engine, but you got to change the heads and the intake. Some say you got to change the camshaft, but if it came out of a truck, you won't have to worry about changing the camshaft. Some say you got to change the timing cover, which the timing cover on this engine and the MerCruiser engine is the same. Only thing different is this one just got a crankshaft sensor. But I just want to make sure everything's going to line up before we get this other engine, and then I go to put it together and find out, something ain't right. I think the deck height on the block is the same. Only thing is different is the heads. Like I say, these heads got more of a slant to it, and the MerCruiser heads, they're kind of straight up and down almost, not a real big slant. So I think we should be able to use a later model block. A lot of guys say you can, like I said, but I thought all 4.3s was the same. But when they went to that throttle body spider injection, they went with a more wider intake. So we're gonna get these heads off, and we'll bolt that on there and make sure it's all gonna work. Clearly we can see this engine had got some water or blow head gasket, and it is just full of crud. I don't know if don't look like rust. It looks like mud or antifreeze, but this engine clearly needed some love. That piston there got some carbon on it, looks like. Burning some oil. So we're going to get the other heads and set them on there and keep moving. Make sure we're making the right decision. So we got the MerCruiser heads on this 2000 something model block, and sitting on there, everything looks to be good. The deck height is the same as the MerCruiser block. All those 4.3s was the same, basically the same engine, just the heads were different. And your intake gaskets, you gotta run marine style intake gaskets, which I gotta buy, and marine style head gaskets. But all your bolts line up, so you can use a 4.3 out of like a Blazer or S10 or Chevy van or Chevy 1500. You just have to change your heads. I know we got to change the oil pan, and we also got to put brass freeze plugs in our other engine when we get it. You can't run metal freeze plugs because they'll rust out. So we'll be changing the freeze plugs. I think it's 2 on each side of the block. Got 2 back here. So yeah, it's going to work out. I think it's going to work out good. And we also got to get a carburetor because someone stole the carburetor off of it. But anyway, we'll get these heads cleaned up, get them over to the head machine shop, let them check them, and we'll go from there.